Welcome to the Honest Health Podcast with your host, Jeffrey Burke. Honest Health brings you the brightest minds in the natural products industry, as well as athletes and entertainers. Jeff will keep you entertained and informed while educating on how to be successful on your healthy journeys. Now, here's your host, Jeffrey Burke.
Hello and welcome back to the Honest Health Podcast. My name is Jeffrey Burke, and I'm so glad you're here. This is my new platform. And the whole idea behind this platform is to bring you the most up-to-date, groundbreaking information from some of the best minds within the natural products industry, as well as a whole bunch of people outside the industry, with every one of them having a great message and story to share. Because in my mind, everybody has something to bring to the table, and you never know when you're going to get that motivating piece of information that's going to help you change your life or do a plot twist somewhere in the middle and give you an idea that you may never ever have thought about. That's the whole idea. Hey, if you like what I'm doing here, make sure to share and like and subscribe and all that kind of stuff. You know what to do. And I think you're going to really enjoy the guests that I've got lined up, including my guest today. My guest today, Brad Buchholz, is here. And as you can see from the description in the program, he's done a lot. He is definitely an individual that has brought a lot to every single field that he has worked in, and you're going to see that. So help me welcome my guest and sit back and enjoy. Hi, Brad.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you. I know I've been pursuing you for a while to come on here, so thank you for making this happen.
No, thank you very much. Anytime I get a chance to get out and talk to people, I always try to take advantage of it.
Well, I think we all have something to say, and it's kind of been my mantra for a long time that, you never know when that one piece of information is going to come, and you never know when it's going to be that one thing that you hear and you're just like, that's it, and you've been searching and it just falls in your lap. And, sometimes those are the best pieces of information. And I know that you've done a lot of different things and you've been wonderful at everything that you've done. Out of all the things that you've done, what's the most favorite thing that you've done thus far in your young age?
My young age. Wow, that right there is my most favorite thing I've ever heard. So I love being a salesperson, and it's a different concept for me than most people that talk about it. I have never once convinced somebody to take a product they didn't need. Mm-hmm. My only job is to find where people are having difficulties, find a solution that works for them, and then help them get to the next point. Because what I do is I make them look good by finding a solution to a problem they're having. And when you start looking at sales that way, it changes the entire focus. If someone's, going to get a promotion because of the work I'm doing for them, because I solved a problem that their company's having, well, then all of a sudden I am not the sales guy that's trying to convince them to buy something. I'm the sales guy that's keeping him moving forward in his career. And looking at sales that way, it's been how I've always done sales. I help people, and if you help them, you grow with them. It's kind of the base of my of everything I've ever done in my career. And you said something, you never know when the one thing is going to change you. And I always tell this to all the people that I work with, that I've trained as a salesperson, is every person that walks up to your booth, you have to imagine them as being a seed. You don't know how they're going to grow. You don't know how it's going to turn out. But you have to give the same due diligence. You can't look at, say, it's, XYZ company that has, 200 million in sales, or it's just a husband and wife that walks up. You never know until you start doing your due diligence and working on solutions for them. That $200-300 million company started out probably as a husband and wife team. And my job is to get them to that point. And the nice thing about my career is I've got to work with really big companies, and I've worked with small companies as well. And the one thing that I have found is if you just, get back. So I had one of my first bosses who was from Sheffield, England. And he told me I have 24 hours to respond to somebody. If somebody reaches out to me with a question, I either got to get them an answer or tell them I'm working on getting them an answer and I have 24 hours, because they are in a situation and they're looking to have that answered. They don't want to wait, oh, I'll get back to you in a week or 2 weeks. That's not what they need. They need it today. So I have a colleague that I work with. His name's Jason, and he goes, it's so funny. He goes, I get so many compliments that I respond to people so quickly because nobody responds. And I said, they have a problem. Our job is to solve that problem. And it's on us to find that answer as quickly as we possibly can. But every person that walks up to my booth, I treat them as they are my next, multi-million-dollar company, no matter if I know who they are or don't know who they are. And I treat them all exactly the same, because I have found so many times in my life the company that other people weren't talking to because they weren't big enough or weren't interesting enough. Those were the customers I've had my entire career.
It's funny. We're in a lot of alignment here, because one of the things I've always said is I always said, never assume, always be curious, always be a problem solver, and continue being an educator.
100%.
And I think, and that's kind of where we are. And if you're doing it right, and I have that same thing happens, because people will send me a text or an email, and I'm like, zoop, and they're just like, hi, were you like sitting on your phone? And I'm like, well, it's permanently glued to my hand. I mean, I get it. I mean, if I don't answer it, then I got to do it later. Why not do it now while it's fresh in my head and give you the answer that you're looking for? So I agree with that 100%.
And nothing influences people faster than being heard and getting their answer solved. Even if it doesn't turn out to be a order or a customer, they never forget that. And they always associate me with solving a problem. And I'll do it for people. I don't work in the contract manufacturing space any longer, but people reach out to me and say, Brad, back in the day, you would help me with this. And I still will help them with it. And they go, well, can you point me in the right direction? And I always do, because honestly, it's kind of why we're here. The information that I've acquired over my 15 years of working at a contract manufacturer doesn't do me a lot of good if I'm not, giving it out to people.
That's right.
And one of my favorite things is people said, how are you gonna monetize all that you know? And I go, listen, I have a job. That's what I get my compensation for. What I know is completely different than that. If people have a problem, just like you said, and I can answer that one problem, and all of a sudden 5 years from now, I run into a trade show and they come up to me and say, that one piece of advice pointed me in the right direction, and our company is thriving now, that's worth all the money in the world to me.
Talk to me about the natural products industry, where it was when you started, like, the standing of the industry and how it was looked at on a big scale, and where you think we are today in kind of like a balance kind of thing. How different is it?
So I have a different sort of history. I worked only in contract manufacturers.
Right.
I never worked in brands. Brands have a whole different world. They're trying to create an image in the industry that is associated with their brand for quality and everything else. They would reach out to contract manufacturers, and that's a different business model. A contract manufacturer only has one real responsibility, and that's getting a price that is good for the customer, but also good for the manufacturer. So a lot of times I will pick up stuff at a health food store or off the shelf at a Walmart or a CVS, and I'll turn around and look at the supplement facts and know where that contract manufacturer made all their money. And I can just look at it really quickly and say, this isn't what the consumer's thinking he's buying. Oh. And you hear a lot of stuff now with gummies and stuff that's being sold on Amazon. And you sit there and you go, wow, how can anybody do that in good conscience? And honestly, a lot of the brands don't have any idea. they get the product. Everything seems to be what they were expecting, and it looks right, tastes right, or whatever. But there were ways that the contract manufacturer kind of got around things to make that happen.
Wow.
And when people pull stuff off the shelves and test it 6 months later and it doesn't meet shelf life, I always get really frustrated with that, because there were things that could have been done to make sure that it did. And those things really don't cost that much more, but they do include different steps and a better formulator. So I always read those stories, and I don't get so mad at the brands. I get more upset with whoever made it for the brand.
I see, and I know a lot of people, of course, in the industry after this many years, and I know a lot of them that are sticklers about the raw products that they purchase, the ingredients that they go for. They make sure that the testing has been done, that, it looks like a dog, it is a dog. They're making sure that they're getting the right thing. They're spending their money wisely, their quality, integrity, and transparency, which I think is very, very important. But there's always going to be the people out there that buy the stuff that the other companies turn down. And there's going to be somebody out there that's going to do it, to your point. And it's not about integrity with some of those companies. It's not about quality. It's not about transparency. It's turn and burn, if you will. And that's very sad and disheartening to me as well, because I look at it this way. It's hard enough for someone today to decide that they're going to change their world and start getting healthy. And then that same person has then got to make decisions, has to make changes. And the worst thing for them is to put their faith into something that there's no chance that it's ever going to do anything that they want it to do. And it doesn't just turn them off to that one brand, it turns them off to the industry. And then everybody,
100%.
then they don't come back at all. We lose them because of the inappropriate formulations and lack of transparency, quality control that was done with that one company. So for people like yourself that have been in the industry for a long time, and that have done it right in every stage of the game, thank you, for having that passion and that integrity, because to me it means a lot. And it's the foundation of how this industry was supposed to be built. And I'm hoping that we're still heading in that really good direction, because I think there's still a lot of us out there. There's just some in between that are not really following the code.
I think there's always going to be both kinds of companies.
That's true.
There's going to be companies out there there's going to be ingredient suppliers who do a really good job finding. So as a person now who sells ingredients, that's a whole new challenge. I mean, you have to come up with a unique selling proposition for your ingredient. And then you have to go to all these brands and say, here's what it is. And it's going to influence the cost of that product. So you have to find a synergy and a right branding. But then you sit there and you go, well, your product is great. It has great clinical studies, and you do a lot. But this company it says it does the exact same thing from the exact same kind of plant. And how is theirs so much less than yours? And you find that so common now. And it happened all the time. One of the purchasing people that I worked with came into my office and he said, "Why are we only using trademarked ingredients?" And I said, "Because you know the quality of them." And he said, "Well, I can get the exact same thing, if not better, for half the price." And I said, "No, you can't. You can get something that says that it's the same thing, but it's not going to be the same thing." The people who are spending $200,000 to $300,000 on a clinical study to show what it does and at what dosage, it's not the same thing when it goes from a different plant, from a different region. And honestly, one of my favorite things that I do now is I talk about cocoa all the time. And cocoa is Anthony Bourdain did a show in 2017 on cocoa, and he started off saying cocoa is going extinct. And I did not even, it didn't resonate with me. I wasn't selling cocoa. Now I sell an ingredient as a cocoa extender. And now it really does resonate. Cocoa, it takes about 7 years to plant a cocoa tree and have it start producing cocoa that you can turn into what we know as cocoa. A cocoa tree lasts for about 25 years. So you only have between year 7 and year 25, it will still produce cocoa, but it will produce it less and less quality. All of the cocoa that we use for your ready to drinks, your protein powders, your chocolates, your Hershey's and everybody else comes from North Africa. And North Africa is their average tree age is about 21 years, and they're not replanting. So what's going to end up happening is in about 4 years, cocoa is going to become very, very problematic. And you see it when I first started talking about cocoa extenders, it went from about $3,000 a metric ton to up to almost $12,000 in about a 6-month period. And on top of all that, there are other concerns with global warming, with mites and other parasites that are killing those plants. And the urban sprawl in that part of the world, they're tearing out trees and making homes. They're not tearing out trees and making more trees. So you see a lot of the crop coming out of Central America. And honestly, it has its own benefits, but it's not as common. So the price is going to continue to go up. But that's all so the company that I work for now, Wonderful, is the pistachios, Wonderful pistachios, Wonderful almonds, halos, POM Wonderful, the company that I work for. And we do so much, but the amount of science that goes in to making a pomegranate tree, or creating pistachios, or creating almonds, or creating any of the produce, it's billions of dollars of work and investment. And so no, just because one company has done all that work, it's not the same with the company that's right down the road. And I can look at the differences between a pomegranate from our orchard and somebody else's when I walk into a store, because they're early season pomegranates, which are a different varietal than ours. And you just look at them and they don't look, taste, or perform like ours does. So that's one of the things that's been the most interesting part of what I'm doing now, is I don't think people understand how much work goes in to the produce at their store. It's really kind of mind-blowing to me how many people are in that process to be able to make a good quality fruit vegetable. And same thing with any of your meat products as well, because they kind of get in that same situation.
I call it piggybacking research. And these people will spend billions of dollars, to your point, on research and testing and trials and all that stuff. They'll get everything published. They're putting out products that are pure and clean, doing it right. They know how to mix it. They know what the synergism is with the other ingredients they mix it with. And then there'll be like an expose on a product. And let's say they'll throw an herb like ginger. And these people are using regenerative ginger. They're using the best from the best ground. They're protecting the soil, following organic standards. And then you'll see somebody that says, "Hey, did you hear that? Did you read that expose and that PubMed article on the ginger with all the wonderful benefits?" I said, "I did." And he goes, "We make a ginger." And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "So this might be something to look at." And I said, have you done studies on the ginger? Have you done any of the research? He goes, "Well, the research has been done." I said, "Yes, but not on yours. It's been done. It's a different issue. They did the studies on theirs. They used certain age groups. Unless you're following the same ingredients, the same age group, the same duration of the studies, the same dosage, the same quality, and the same kind of individual analysis of the herb, it's apples and oranges. I mean, yours may be great, but you can't compare it to someone who's already done all the research."
See, and that's where I think a lot of things get lost.
I agree.
A lot of consumers will see a podcast and go, oh my God, I need to be taking. I just watched one where they were talking about the benefits of B vitamins and omega-3s. And I just sit there going, as a guy who has sold a lot of fish oil in his life in a lot of different formats, not all fish are the same. And I remember so fish oil comes out of the fish as about 300 milligrams of omegas per gram. Okay. And it's usually, depending on where it's from, it's an 1812. And then you would see all of these high potency fish oils that would be way beyond that. And then people just started competing on that and making a really high DHA and really high EPA. And then, there were a lot of lawsuits that said, you can't call that fish oil. You can call it omega-3s derived from fish, but you can't call it fish oil because it's no longer fish oil if you have to alter it dramatically to be able to make that EPA or DHA claim. And so the consumer doesn't know that. Consumer goes, hey, this is a good brand and this is higher potency than this one, and it costs the same. I should get the higher potency one. And it is apples and oranges, and where it's fished, and how it's processed, and is the company reputable, and then there are so many things. But going to your point, you look at all the crops that look at winemaking, and they talk about the terroir, and that it's the soil, it's the rain, it's the preparation, it's how it's harvested, how it's turned into the wine that we drink. There's so much that goes into things, and it's just not a bottled wine. It's all the stuff that went in there, and the generations of winemaking that went into it. And it's not just the guy who creates the wine, because that's a skill in itself. But it's the guy who plants the grapes and knows how far to put distances between each of those vineyards, and how much sun it needs, and how much how hard it has to be for those roots to get to the soil so you get enough flavor in those grapes. That's a whole career in itself. And people don't really go into that. But it's the same thing with any of the herbs that we deal with that are in a formulation, and you sit there and you go, yeah, it is the same name, but it is not the same ingredient.
It's so true. And, and I feel bad sometimes because I think, and like I was mentioning just a little bit ago, when someone decides to try something, and let's say they're at a drugstore and they try something that's sitting in a bargain bin, and they're like, oh, I've been hearing about this. And they pick it up and they take it home and they try it, and it does absolutely nothing, because there's no way it would have done anything, because there's really hardly anything in it, which is saddening to me because of the fact that, how did it slip out of there in the first place and get on the shelf? But that person says, you know what? I knew that this stuff was no good. And they throw the whole industry out on the garbage with the trash, rather than going back and saying, go to a health food store where you can get miraculous information handed to you and have conversations. And you could say, I tried this, and they're just like, there's nothing in that. I mean, you have to really deal with companies that are doing it right. So they go and they get a recommendation and they get something that works. And now they're like, okay, now I see that. But we lose people that way because they just give up on all of it because the one thing didn't work, because really they didn't ask. They just grabbed something that should have been, at least quality, and it wasn't, but they didn't ask any questions. That's because I always tell people to be curious. Ask questions. Start a conversation. If you go to a health food store today and you start a conversation, you're going to have great information, and you're going to have a resource that you can go to every time you need to.
100%. And there are great podcasts like this one that do discuss the ins and outs of supplements. And another big thing that's for me is the ultra processed foods, and the amount of science that went in to tricking your brain into eating more calories than you possibly need. And it's so funny when you think about the millions and millions of dollars. I mean, learning that the how a can of soda opens and the sound it makes will set off dopamine in the brain. pulling out the crunch out of a food, because the crunching will set off hormones in your brain that tell you that you're not going to be able to eat that. But my favorite one always is we pulled out polyphenols and fiber out of food.
Yeah.
Because if you have something loaded with fiber, you won't eat a lot. Mm-hmm. And polyphenols have other things with shelf life. Mm-hmm. But if you eat a diet rich in polyphenols and fiber, you have enough nutrients where your body will release hormones telling you, okay, you've eaten enough, you can stop now. And now there's huge industries where they make a drug that mimics your body's own way of dealing with that. And people are going, wow, this is fantastic. And I go, no, this is horrible. This is, you're learning a hack. You're not learning a skill. You need to know how to eat and what to eat. And it's funny because a lot of the drugs that are targeting those things, when you talk to the consumers taking those medications, they'll tell you they never go to the center of the grocery store anymore. They always go on the outside where the produce and the proteins are. And they don't go into the parts where there's the chips, the cookies, and everything else, because they have no need of those things any longer. And you sit there and you go, okay, that's what your body has been needing all along. But the way, I mean, honestly, I hate to say it, I don't want to throw any company under the bus, but when your marketing strategy is you can't eat just one, that's not a good marketing strategy. That is trying to tell people you need to eat the whole can. That's what's good for you. Mm-hmm. Or I just read something on LinkedIn, because we were talking about LinkedIn, about how sales for toothpaste was going down. And so to combat this is they made the opening of the toothpaste container 1 millimeter wider. And now people use 40% more. So their sales are going up. And I said, that's the people who are creating food. And that's what terrifies me, because you walk in and kids don't know. They look at their parents and they go, hey, can I have this? And you want to give your kid a treat. If you're in the store, he's being quiet and everything else, everything that they want. No kids ever go, Mom, I really want a mango. It's never been said. They say, I want the double stuffed Oreos because those look amazing. Look at the packaging. And I go, yeah, there was a guy very much like me who said, hey, I can make the packaging look even better to kids. And it's just one of those things that I'm hoping it changes. I'm hoping, and it is. That's the one nice thing is all the companies that I deal with now, really big companies, companies that made, billions and billions of dollars on ultra processed food, are now looking for ways of making foods healthier again. And I think they're getting a lot of pushback because the consumer is becoming wise. But also, I mean, the last number I heard, it'll be like 30 to 40% of the population will be on a GLP-1 type medication. And if they're not eating from the middle of the grocery store, that's 40% of your customers that are no longer going to be customers. And they won't buy the treats for their kids when those things aren't attractive to the parents anymore. So it will change the industry. But just to let you know, I have had conversations with really, really good scientific people that are making lots of money right now, trying to find ways to thwart the GLP-1 drugs where people will go back to eating more and more again. So they're companies and they're trying to increase their bottom line. What I'm trying to do is give them options that make food healthier.
What's really interesting to me, people would love to be given the permission to be bad.
Yeah.
We love the permission. I don't know if you remember this. I think I'm a lot older than you, but there was a time when we were told not to eat any fat. It was completely zero fat. And I'll never forget, people were giving up all the fat, which is what the stupidest things we could have ever done because we need fat. And I was at a grocery store and I was in Los Angeles and everybody was waiting in the parking lot with shopping carts. And I walked up and I go, what is this? And they go, the Snackwell trucks are coming. And I'm like, what? And he goes, the Snackwell trucks. The Snackwell was a company that made all of these bakery goods and donuts and all these things that right up had no fat on there. So these people were in love with it. All they did was add more sugar and all other kinds of things. But people were sitting there. They couldn't even get them into the store because they were just filling people's baskets up. You can eat as much as you want. There's no fat. And I literally stood back that day and I thought to myself, oh my God, we are so weak. And this went on for a period of time. And finally, I remember the news came on and they're like, research has shown that we need a certain amount of fat in our diet. And I'm like, I couldn't believe it.
And then we replaced it with the worst fats we possibly could.
Of course. Absolutely.
Yes, just because they're cheaper.
Yeah.
But my favorite one during that same time, and I don't think I am younger than you by any means. Do you remember the fat substitute that came out that was really popular, but you had to put that horrible warning on your bag of chips?
I remember that.
I do not know if this is a PG-13 podcast, but when you have to put on your package, this product may cause anal leakage, that is one of those things where you should maybe not eat that. That should tell people, hey, that's not good. That's not healthy.
But I could eat a lot of it.
Yeah. Well, and you'll get a lot of leakage, which is fantastic. But now let's go back to our industry because we do a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah.
And I have made a lot of the same stuff. So I'm one of those people that have okayed production runs because it was a good customer. But a lot of the carb blockers that came out at the very beginning, I remember sitting with one of the companies and I asked him point blank, how much carbohydrates does this block? Because I had people saying, can I eat this with a bowl of pasta and not have to worry about the carbohydrates? And so I asked, and he goes, it probably will block less than the amount of the active. And I said, wait. So like a 500 milligram dose would block less than 500 milligrams of carbohydrates? And he didn't say yes or no to that. That was back in my days of drinking. So I might have prodded a little bit. And so finally he just said, don't take it and eat a big bowl of pasta or eat a pizza. It's not going to give you the level of protection. And then the other one that I did a lot of in my career were the weight loss products that were so caffeine heavy that people would take them and say, I am really feeling the energy that I'm getting from my diet. And I'd be like, it could be the 15 glasses of coffee you just had the equivalent caffeine of. And then on top of that, one of the cheapest forms of caffeine at that time was caffeine anhydrous. And I had the greatest formulator. He's no longer at the company I was with, but he's still very active in the industry. And Neil looked at me and he goes, you know, that comes from petroleum, right? And I said, no. And he goes, yeah, don't tell people that. They probably wouldn't want to hear that. So there are really good companies in our industry making really good products. Yeah. And I think, and people are starting to realize that. So I've been a big advocate of prebiotics, probiotics, and postbiotics for a long time. And this is going back to when they were just starting in Japan before they ever made it here. And before there really was a term called a prebiotic or a postbiotic. I think those came a few years later. And people would sit there and ask me, hey, is this good for me? And, you know, there's a lot of answers that go into that. And if any bacteria you take that has good clinical studies based on what it doesn't really matter if it doesn't, flourish in your digestive system. And all of us inherit our digestive systems from our mom, and not all bugs will colonize the same way in every person. So you kind of have to know and try different bacteria to see what works best for you, to see what benefit you're getting. But my favorite thing about my current job was was a conversation that I had about prebiotics. So prebiotics are amazing. It's the food source for the bacteria, and there's good sources. But one of the legal counsel that I was talking to said, "So what percentage of people get the benefit from the prebiotic?" And I said, "That's a great question. What do you mean?" And they go, "Well, does everybody get a prebiotic benefit? Because not all people have the same bacteria, and not all prebiotics are digested by all bugs. There are certain bacteria that digest certain prebiotic fibers better than others. So what percentage of the prebiotic is being consumed by the general population?" And I just looked at him going, "You're an attorney. I'm not going to have this conversation because I know where this is going." But I think that's going to be the next thing that happens is if you have a really good prebiotic that is only good for 30% of the population, then you're really going to have to make broad spectrum prebiotics. And you're going to have to be able to target a larger community of people. And that means you're going to have a diverse form of food choices for the bacteria in your gut. It's not going to be a one, beta-glucan or one, it's going to have to be a combination.
And it had to be a buffet, and then they get to eat what they like.
Yeah. And then the postbiotic is not always the same for every person. So definition of a prebiotic is a food source for a bacteria that has a positive, effect on the human body. So if something only triggers a positive effect in 20% of the people, is it by definition then a prebiotic fiber? It is for 1 out of 5 people, but is that enough? And what percentage would need to be enough?
That's really interesting. And to your point, I really do think that's going to be a definite area of focus, especially with the world and the terrible state of our digestive guts that are going on, which most of it is self-induced because of the things that we refuse to give up and the things we love and the terrible things they make taste good that we don't want to get rid of. So we're kind of responsible for some of it. So if you could change one thing, let's say within your field today, maybe it's ingredients, maybe it is contract manufacturing, maybe it is the nutrition industry, just from what you see walking into stores, what's one thing that you would change in any of those areas that everybody could benefit from?
So I'm going to give you the piece of advice that was given to me when I left. If you're a brand and you're working with a contract manufacturer, mm-hmm. and you say, "I want to have a formulation that's really good for digestive health or brain health or heart health," and that's what you say, you are, as a contract manufacturer, they are going to find something that is the best formulation for the contract manufacturer, not for the brand. You as a brand, if you want a product that really does something for somebody, you need to really specify what ingredients, what delivery form, what excipients, if any, and really stay on them and have a relationship with the ingredient suppliers as well as the contract manufacturer, because it's I will look at somebody's pricing and they'll say, I'm getting this product. And I go, you can't be getting this product. I said, there's no way, because I know the cost of those raw materials. If they're really in there, it would cost this, the raw material cost would be much higher than that. And they don't want to hear it. They want to have the lowest price possible because they think that's what's going to, be the benefit. But what that ends up doing is getting you right back to your original conversation with, if you are getting shortchanged on your raw materials and you don't have a relationship with those suppliers, the consumer you're making those products to, you're spending a lot of money to get them to try it for the first time. You want them to get the benefit you expect them to get. And if it's being sort of cheated from you, that's on you. You can't, you have to do due diligence. You have to build relationships with your contract manufacturer and really to the point where you can get them on the phone on a weekend and say, hey, tell me again, you're using this material that we discussed, and have him not hem and haw, and have him know right off the top of his head, absolutely, if I said it was in there, it's going to be in there, and not have him, worry. Because I've seen too many people come in and show me their formulations, and I go, well, first of all, it won't fit in the capsule. There's just no way. And they'll go, what do you mean it won't fit in the capsule? And I go, well, these are all, fluffy materials, and it's just not going to happen. So have you really done third-party testing? And they'll go, no, they have their own lab. And I go, please just send it to a third-party lab and just make sure you're getting what they say you're getting. And C of A's, I've seen a lot of C of A's that come from companies overseas, and I don't like talking bad about anybody. But I mean, I had a shipment that went to the Middle East, and I used a gelatin, and it was halal certified, and it was from a very big custom or a very big vendor of gelatin. And I mean, one, very trustworthy. We bought, truckloads every year from them, and it got stopped. And my customer called yelling, saying, "Hey, they're finding porcine in the gelatin." And I said, "That's impossible. It's halal." And so I went to the customer or to the vendor. Vendor said, "Let me get on the phone with the company," and they had sourced it in China. And the customer came back, and they came back and said, "We're so sorry. It must be a mistake. We'll get you another shipment to make up for it." Well, I've already lost that customer. That customer is now dealing with the government of another country. And you sit there looking at it going, that's somebody's religious belief. That's not, that's a lot more than just, hey, oops, I made a mistake. It's people not doing their due diligence. And it was a huge company all across the board, from the vendor to the customer and to the buyer in the Middle East. So there's a lot of people that, I just sat there going, no matter what I say, it's not going to make up for that.
It's sad. And I like your idea to your point about staying busy, staying active, staying on top, staying curious once again.
Yes.
And making sure that you have follow through, that you're, overseeing the full chain of command all the way through, and holding people accountable. If you say you're going to do it, then I expect you to do it. If you're not going to do it, I'll find someone that will. But be honest with me and don't say that you are, because it's damaging relationships. And in this case, a religious belief. I mean, that's even worse than just saying oopsie, so I agree with that. I like what you have to say.
And better costs don't mean better products. Ever.
No, it doesn't. No, it really doesn't. Wow. This has been so much fun. Do me a favor. I put everybody on the grill seat here at the end.
Sure.
Leave everybody with a Brad thought of the day.
So I'm a huge person on goals. I think that if you don't have goals, I think it's think it's 30% of people don't have set goals. And they're kind of going through life on autopilot. And that's not the best way to go through life. But you can be any person you want to be. All it takes is you changing first. And the easiest way for you to change your life is by really asking yourself in the key areas of your life, what's important to me and how can I be better at these things? And what's the question I always use is, what am I doing well? And I should do more of? What am I doing poor, or what should I do less of? What new skills and knowledge should I acquire? And what should I stop doing altogether? And go to those 4 or 5 different parts of your life. It's your health and well-being. It's your mental health. It's your family. It's your career, whatever it is. And set goals 1 to 2, not a lot. And just say, in 5 years, I would like to see myself doing this. And then create a goal structure where you start off where you are today, where you want to be. We all took geometry as kids and we learned how to do a reverse proof. You start at your end, or you start at the beginning and the end, and then work backwards and put together steps to where it's really simple. And if you do that, you can be anybody you want to be.
I like that. I want to thank you so much for being here today. This has been wonderful. I'm glad we had the chance to spend some time together.
And just the last thing is, it has been wonderful working for the wonderful company. Every day I have is a wonderful day.
I love it. I love it. You're in your zone. You're in your place. I hope everybody loved this as much as I did. I've been speaking today with Brad Buchholz. We've been talking about things that he's heard, things that he's done, things that he believes in, the way he sees things. And I got to tell you what, he sees things. We're either both wrong or we're both right, because we're both looking at things kind of similarly in a lot of different ways. So I want to thank you for being here today. Will you come back and see me again?
Anytime.
I love it. Everybody have a fantastic day. Remember, you can listen to the podcast on any platform that you enjoy. Of course, please go to my YouTube channel if you want to watch the interview, and see the gorgeous people I bring on my podcast. So you can see them in full color, which is and enjoy it. Remember, I'm supposed to tell you, after 42 years of radio, I never had to say it, but I have to say it now. Make sure you subscribe. Have a great day, everybody. Do something awesome. Do something healthy. And remember, always stay curious. God bless.
Bye now.
Stay tuned for more information from the Honest Health Podcast with Jeffrey Burke. And make sure to check back often for interviews and conversations from the guests we all want to hear from. I'm John the Announcer. Thanks for listening.